This week, we welcome Adam Fletcher, Chief Information Security Officer at Blackstone, to discuss security challenges, security trends, and the Global Cyber Innovation Summit. In the Leadership and Communication segment, 5 ways to find natural leaders for your team, why rest is essential to high performance, shift to public cloud curbs data center spending, and more. Business Security Weekly starts now.
This is Security Weekly, for security professionals, by security professionals.
Broadcasting live from G-Unit Studios in Rhode Island, it's the show where we explore the business of security to improve the security of business. Your trusted source for actionable insights on leadership, communication, and innovation. Get ready for Business Security Weekly. How do you use the information from this show to address issues that executives actually care about? TrustedSec is a global information security consulting firm built on cutting-edge attack simulation research that extends those insights to advisory services, including governance, risk, and compliance, PCI, virtual CISO, and MITRE attack framework assessments. TrustedSec helps you translate the types of zeros and ones that you care about to the types of zeros and ones that executives care about. Go to TrustedSec.com/Security Weekly. Learn how TrustedSec can become an extension of your team. The question is simple. Have any of the systems on my network been compromised? The answer is harder than it should be. Enter AI Hunter. Active Countermeasures has automated and streamlined techniques used by the best pen testers and threat hunters in the industry to create AI Hunter, a network threat hunting solution that does the first pass of a hunt for you to identify systems that are most likely to be compromised and scores the results on a scale from 0 to 100. You can then research those systems in depth with AI Hunter. Focus your valuable time on the systems that need your expertise with AI Hunter. Sign up for a personal demo today at securityweekly.com/ACM. Security can't solve crucial problems when they have to wade through thousands of alerts a day. With ServiceNow, you can easily prioritize and respond to your most crucial business threats. That way you can go from overwhelmed to under control. ServiceNow brings security, risk, and IT together on one platform. Learn more at securityweekly.com/ServiceNow.
Welcome to Business Security Weekly. This is episode number 125, recorded April 22nd, 2019. I am your host, Matt Alderman, in Colorado, joined by my co-host, Paul Asadorian, in G-Unit Studio.
Hey, Matt. Good to be here.
Yeah, day after Easter. I get to fly out tonight. I'll see you in studio the rest of this week, which will be fun. I'm bringing you a surprise, by the way.
Awesome.
I got to pack my bag because I can't get alcohol on the plane.
I was going to say, hopefully it's something we can
bag.
drink or smoke on Thursday night.
We're drinking on Thursday night. I'm
Excellent.
bringing you a bottle of something that we're going to try out and see if it's something we want to label and have available.
Excited.
Yeah. All right. Join your CISO peers at the Global Cyber Innovation Summit May 1st and 2nd at the Sagamore Pendry in Baltimore, Maryland. This is an invitation-only event. Please visit globalcybersummit.org/request-information to request your invitation. You can now submit your suggestions for guests in our recently released guest suggestion form. Go to securityweekly.com/guests and enter your suggestions. All right, let's start with our guest interview. Adam Fletcher is the Chief Information Security Officer at Blackstone. As a security professional with over 18 years of experience, Adam has worked with global security organizations large and small, including McAfee, Nokia, VeriSign, ISS, and Accuvant. Prior to joining Blackstone, Adam led the international security team for Equifax, coordinating a global security program across 14 countries, each with different business, regulatory, and privacy requirements. Adam, welcome to Business Security Weekly.
Thank you.
When I did the prep call with you on Thursday, I realized you and I know a lot of the same people. I went out to LinkedIn today. I'm like, wait, 139 mutual connections. You worked at Accuvant after me, which is why I think we probably never met in person. And it's taken us this long to actually, for once, kind of talk. But yeah, we have a lot of the same connections.
Yeah, it's a small world, right? But at the same time, it can be big sometimes, and you connect with people all the time.
Yeah, so give us a little background first into how your career got started. on the information security side, but then ultimately how you ended up in the CISO role at Blackstone.
Well, it's been a long journey. I was talking to someone earlier and realized that it's now been about 20 years. So my first job out of college was actually technology consulting with Deloitte. And I was there about 9 months before a friend of mine who had just joined the New York office of a very small security reseller and managed security services provider called Netrex in New York called me up and said, I know you're not happy doing what you're doing. What do you know about IT security, which I think is what we called it at the time? And I said, I don't know anything. And he said, well, it would be a lateral move, salary rise, but we have stock options. Mm-hmm. And 1999, the bubble hadn't burst yet. So I said, yep, that sounds great. Let's go do it. So I joined this office, which was really the floor of our boss's apartment in Tribeca. And we spent our days reading through the checkpoint manual with a router, a switch, I think a Sun Netra T1, and a couple of other different devices on the floor, learning how to install firewalls. Because in 1999, everybody was getting T1s and not everybody had firewalls.
And you spend a lot of time on Phone Boy's website, I would imagine.
Absolutely. I can't believe that guy's still around.
We had him on the show not that long ago on Paul's Security. One of the shows. He's a pretty regular guest. Yeah.
Yeah. He was our lifeline back in those days. So I started kind of my cybersecurity career as doing 2-day firewall installs for clients around the country, parlayed that into bigger and bigger projects, traveled the world, was very lucky, got to live in Brazil on a long-term project with Embratel. Got to live in Finland, in Helsinki, doing a slew of projects for Nokia. Tried my hand at building a managed services business with VeriSign, based out of Geneva in 2002.
So wait, if you were partnered with Nokia, you did IPSO firewall installations then, right?
We did, yeah.
I still have some of those.
What was their VPN device? Crypto Cluster, I think, right?
Their IPSO chassis are still in my server rack to this day.
Have a rack.
Right? It was a great rack mount case.
Absolutely. So really just kind of bigger and bigger. Then, when VeriSign bought the company that I was working with, I ended up coming back to the US. A friend of mine had a moonlighting gig with what was then Network Associates in Dallas. I went and slept on his couch, did a little bit of consulting. That turned into a full-time gig. So I was an internal security architect for McAfee for 4 years. Then went back to consulting at Nokia via Accuvant for a while, did some really interesting projects. Really the precursor to Archer security today was the project that we did at Nokia. And then started kind of working my way up into management and took the Latin America leadership role for Equifax security back in 2010. Lived in Sao Paulo, Brazil, where I met my wife. Spent some time in Latin America, and then eventually moved up to headquarters and came to Blackstone about 5 years ago as the deputy CISO. Did that for 2.5 years, and then took over in early 2017 when my predecessor left.
Yeah, to create something called Clear Sky, right? It was Jay, right? You were working with Jay, yeah.
Yeah, Jay Leak, helped kind of rebuild the cybersecurity program at Blackstone 6 or 7 years ago now, and the CISO role here at Blackstone is actually fairly unique, and it's got 3 pieces to it. And one is to be the CISO of Blackstone, obviously the most important part of the role, but the other 2 pieces are one, to kind of be a de facto community leader to Blackstone's portfolio of companies, a number of which have CISOs or security leaders. And under this umbrella of Blackstone's ownership or controlling interest, we collaborate and share best practices, commiserate on challenges that we're facing, and that's a really great kind of closed community that we have to up the level of sharing, across the cybersecurity industry. And then the other thing that we started doing 5 or 6 years ago was to identify early stage cybersecurity companies that were disruptive in the marketplace and had solutions that were not just a better mousetrap, but a completely new way of catching mice. And when we do that, when we find one of those early stage companies that's disruptive in the marketplace, that's a great fit for Blackstone, and we think some of the portfolio would actually adopt as well, then we will actually become investors. So off of Blackstone's balance sheet, not a large amount of money, but enough to be strategic, both as a customer and an investor to those companies. And some of the ones that we've been successful with, over the years are Carbon Black and Silence and Red Owl Analytics. And we helped found CyberGRX and Veridin and Inky and Insights and Preempt. And so we've been very busy, identifying those great new technologies. And it was something that Jay was really passionate about. And he had an opportunity to go and help found Clear Sky Security to go and do cybersecurity investing full time, which created an opportunity for me to be the CISO of Blackstone.
Yeah, and I think what's interesting is because of those three kind of purviews, right? You have your internal challenges within Blackstone, you are working with your investment portfolio, and you're also helping, I would imagine, a number of potential startups coming into the security space. I mean, you see lots of challenges across the security industry landscape. Let's start there a little bit and kind of dig in a little bit of what are some of those kind of key challenges you're seeing, not only internally, but maybe across that portfolio as you look around.
Yeah, so I think of the portfolio really as a microcosm of the broader security industry. I mean, we have over 200 portfolio companies across all verticals, all sizes, and yet when you look at it holistically, they're facing and we're facing the same types of challenges that the broader community as a whole is facing. I think that statistically, we're still dealing with 95% of successful breaches starting with a phishing email. And whether it's phishing or social engineering or business email compromise, whatever technique is being used, those things are, really things that we're all still struggling with because the technologies are just not keeping up with the improvements in attacks, and phishing emails continue to get through. And as we've done a better and better job of training and educating our employees on what to look for, we continue to find that curiosity and context and timeliness, will still make a good lure that much better. And most people will click, right? So, I think there's a shift now in trying to focus on education, but realize that education is not going to solve the problem the way that we thought it was a few years ago. And we need to go back to technologies and tools that are going to help us reduce the risk either before the phish gets through or after the phish gets through and someone clicks on a link, opens an attachment, enters their credentials, etc. So that's one of the big challenges, that we see. Another one is everyone's moving to the cloud. And this is where I think not just the talent gap that's a broader issue for cybersecurity, but the talent gap plus the newness of the technology, creates this kind of vortex where we can't hire security architects for the cloud. We can't hire, security engineers for the cloud fast enough. People don't have the skills. So we have to figure out how do we upskill our teams in place, to prepare for these moves to infrastructure as a service or software as a service, and really, take advantage of the opportunity to set the guardrails and the configurations early before mistakes are made and damage can be done. I think those are two of the bigger ones that I see.
So I want to push on the phishing one for a little bit because we've seen this for a while, right? We know that a well-crafted phishing email comes in. Does that mean cyber hygiene and patching and the ability to keep your systems up to date is still one of those just base tenets we're not doing very well in the industry? So my question is it really more innovation there, or is it just doing some of the basics? I'm curious your thoughts on those two angles.
Well, I think there's a combination here. So one, on doing more of the basics, I think that defense in depth, which is, it seems to have gone out of favor as terminology that we use, is still absolutely critical in phishing defense, because when I think about it, a phishing email does get through and an employee clicks on a link, then I'm looking to have good endpoint preventative technology that's going to block malware if it's malware embedded in a attachment, or if it's a link and they go to a website. Well, ideally, either a proxy or a firewall with good threat intelligence would prevent the user from even getting to that website. But supposing they do, and they either enter credentials or they download additional malicious software, I want controls in place to reduce the blast radius or reduce the impact, minimize the impact of that happening as well. So, even though I've trained this user and I'm hoping that they don't click or open the attachment until it's been investigated and confirmed safe, these layers of defense, are still really important. And then in the, to get back to your original question, on the off chance that all of this stuff fails and something does get through and it's something that can exploit a vulnerability, like MS, 1117, which was WannaCry and NotPetya, then we should have patched for that, right? Or, in the case of NotPetya, which spread, from workstation to workstation over ports that most employees don't need to use for daily communication, we probably should have blocked those. And we can block those using group policy and Windows firewall. So there absolutely is a very basic element of hygiene to this, that a lot of companies don't do a great job with. To the second part of the question, innovation in phishing technology, yeah, I think it's still really important. And, we see, companies come into the marketplace all the time that are, hoping to be a better mousetrap when it comes to preventing phishing emails. The one that we've partnered with, Inky, has a new technique, to identify whether or not, an image is the legitimate image from that company versus, a copy of that image that's slightly off and is probably being used by attackers, right? So that's another, way that we have to keep up with the latest techniques being used by attackers to try and prevent as much as we can, and then rely on detection and response when prevention isn't possible.
Adam, I truly believe that we're very concerned about email phishing today. And I've already started to see the shift go outside of email. And I feel like as we build more protections into email phishing and even browsers, that the attackers are going to shift probably ahead of us and move to other technologies. Have you seen many startups start to tackle this newer problem that I think is going to become a huge problem in the enterprise?
I haven't seen a ton of it in terms of, phishing, whether it's SMS based or, other messaging systems or social media. Mm-hmm. We tend to see a pretty small amount percentage wise of other types of phishing and social engineering. I think strictly because there's still this perception that everybody is on email all the time. Yep. So, in the same way that, malware writers write malware mostly for Windows, I think phishers are phishing mostly with email, right? Mm-hmm. That's where the money is, at least the bulk of it. So until we see some sort of seismic shift in how people are communicating, I think we'll continue to see that in email. Mm-hmm.
And so, you've got this portfolio. You talk to your peers all the time. I want to transition a little bit into, how do you, as a CISO and your peers, where do you go to collaborate? I want to cover the Global Cyber Innovation Summit a little bit here. How does CISOs work with their peers to really discuss these challenges and then come up with solutions to help solve this across multiple environments? Because the use cases are very similar.
Of course they are. And, you probably know, I think cybersecurity is one of the few industries where, for the most part, business competition is irrelevant, right? I have, for example, a pretty tight-knit group of my peers across other private equity and alternative investment organizations. And we talk all the time, whether it's via email or on monthly phone calls, and it gives us the opportunity to ask, what each other is doing with a certain technology or a certain solution. It gives us the opportunity to benchmark against each other. I mean, I think that it's the nature of executive teams, to always want to know what their peers are doing, whether it's for other enterprise risks like legal and compliance, and now cybersecurity is one of those enterprise risks that everybody wants to be kind of, in the group, right? In the broader financial services sense, I'm fortunate to live in New York City and work in New York City. So there's no shortage of industry organizations, both paid and unpaid, that give me an opportunity to collaborate, with my peers. And then there are the bigger conferences, or the summits where people get together, like the Global Cyber Innovation Summit, right? Which is intending to, raise the level of dialogue around, problems and solutions and, innovation and technology, by bringing some of the best security leaders, along with the best security technologists and innovators and CEOs, and really kind of creating a space where people can talk about the challenges that they're facing, and communicate and collaborate and benchmark with one another, and really try and figure out how we get ahead of, what the attackers are doing.
Yeah, are there specific themes you expect to see at the Global Cyber Innovation Summit in a few weeks? Are there like big kind of thematic areas where you see focus of conversation discussion because these are emerging problems that need to be solved?
Yeah, I think there are a couple. Cloud security, not surprisingly, is one of them. Public-private sharing is one of them. Data provenance, and I think, the idea that and this has been an idea for, I think, a couple of years now, but a data-centric security model, is probably going to be important long-term, especially as the proliferation of data becomes a challenge that CISOs are going to have to deal with more and more frequently. Data science, separating fact from fiction and truth from not on AI versus ML, and how we're all going to use data science, as a tool for better cybersecurity, and really, what to expect, when communicating with, executives. I think, the seismic shift, in how my job is perceived over the last few years, has been that cybersecurity is now on the front page of the newspapers that our executive teams read. You used to have to seek out cybersecurity news, or every now and then you would see something in the Wall Street Journal or the Financial Times or the New York Times. And now it's an almost everyday occurrence, in the papers, on the internet sites, and sometimes even on the morning news shows. So, how do we adequately communicate with, our executive teams so that they have confidence that we know what good looks like? We're testing to see if we're good. We're benchmarking, with our peers, and, we're running programs that are continuously improving, such that they feel like we're doing a good job, and we are doing a good job, right?
Yeah, and I think that's one of the challenges, right, for you in the role as a CISO is understanding how to communicate the potential threats out there from a security perspective in a set of business terms that your executive team understands, right? Like loss of revenue or reputational damage or those sorts of things. Any tips or tricks for your fellow CISOs on some of the things that have helped you with that communication to the executive team?
Yeah, ask questions first and then listen. I don't presume to know everything about, the business. I mean, I've been here 5 years and I'm still learning every day. Asking questions like, what's important to you, right? The simple, question of for all time now, what keeps you up at night? When you get an opportunity to talk to, executives who are decision makers, higher up in the organization, and you ask them, what are they concerned about, right? Don't presume to know what is the most important thing from their perspective, right? What you think might be the most impactful to the business if a cybersecurity incident were to occur may not be the thing that they think is most impactful. And when you have that discussion with them and when you listen to them, you might get a different perspective on how the cybersecurity program should look. And as a CISO, it's really important to be able to adapt to that and to adjust the parameters of both people and process and adapt technology to support those, so that the program is right-sized for your organization.
Yeah, and I think over time, as we continue, to your point, the trend of shifting to the cloud, embracing DevOps, these are all some of these factors that you have to adjust to, but understanding what that means from a business context perspective as well.
Yeah, and I also think that context probably doesn't change all that much, and neither do the fundamentals of cybersecurity. What changes is the techniques that you use to deploy preventative controls or to deploy detection, or to run an incident response playbook using the technologies that are now available in the cloud, whether they're native or deployed off-the-shelf technologies. You kind of have to adapt to that. But fundamentally, a lot of the processes and procedures are very similar. You need good identity and access management. You need, to follow a least privilege model. You need to set guardrails in place so that, you can enable freedom of action for the business, but not, create a scenario where they're taking or bringing risk, that's uncontrolled, right?
Yep. Yeah, agreed. Paul, any additional questions for Adam while we have him?
No, I'm good.
Adam, thank you so much for joining us on Business Security Weekly.
Thanks for having me. Really appreciate it.
Please join Adam and other CISOs at the Global Cyber Innovation Summit by visiting globalcybersummit.org/request information to request your invitation. We'll take a quick break and then cover the leadership and communications articles for this week.